Can we start? It gives me immense pleasure today to kickstart the CEGAANA Spotlight Series event. I'm so happy to have two wonderful people joining us today. Naveen Fola from Chicago and Kumaresh Padaviraman from Bay Area. This has been a dream for us to start this event, and I'm so glad we are at the first and many more to come. I want to thank everyone today who's been part of this in the front, behind, and supporting all through. Finally, also thank all the participants and listeners today who have joined us. Without you all, it would not be a success. So keep supporting us, and the new events we are. Please send us suggestions. We want to work with many of you all. Thank you. Now I'm handing over to Naveen to start the conversation.
Thank you, KG. Good morning to everybody watching. It gives me great pleasure to be a part of this fireside chat series, and it even gives me greater pleasure to be talking to one of my good friends, Kumaresh. So to give you some background, Kumaresh and I were in CEG from the period of 2003 to 2007. And then it so happens Kumaresh decided to choose UIUC for his master's. I followed him a year after, and I ended up at UIUC, and we were roommates for a year. So that is how I know him. And as far as his professional introduction goes, today he is the director of product at LinkedIn. He has held roles at Bing Search, and he, as I mentioned, he has a bachelor's in computer science from CEG, a master's in computer science from UIUC. Kumaresh, I'm really glad to have you on board and kickstart this CEGAANA Spotlight series, and you being one of our prominent alumni.
Thanks, Foggy. They say there are a few people that know you as well as your roommate. So I'm so glad to kick this off with you.
Sure. So let's get on with the few things that I wanted to talk to you about. Maybe start off with your academic journey. CEG to UIUC. I mean, sounds like a long time ago. I mean, it's been 10 years since you left the academic world and entered the industry. But the first question would be, what role do you think CEG played? The 4 years at CEG played in shaping your career. How have those 4 years affected or benefited you?
Obviously, the program and faculty were awesome. Mm-hmm. But looking back, I've got to say there are two things that I didn't quite appreciate then that I've come to realize have really shaped my career and the choices I made, really. The first one is the community. Almost every step of the way, and by community, I'm referring to everyone that was part of the CEG fabric. Mm-hmm. Almost every step of this way, and I'll give you a few examples. I've had a CEG alumni help me in some form, either with making a career choice or with opening up an opportunity that I didn't even know existed. But there's that. There's also the group of people that you went to school with. I see mm-hmm. Steve is on the call. This Foggy, and then close friends of mine that really helped me through those 4 years. One example that I can distinctly remember that made this come to life was Google was this relatively new name. So it was just 1 year post IPO, and they were starting an office in Bangalore, and understandably, they went to all the IITs and then to BITS for hiring interns for that first year. And there was one alumni, her name is Deepa. She chose to make a case for them to come to CEG. and I happened to be a second year student then. And I remember doing the interview with her, like, so as part of the interview, she was part of my interview panel, and I bombed it big time, second year. And she was like, look, man, it's taken a lot of effort for us to bring Google over to CEG, and we expect better from our students. She gave me a good like 15 minutes of guidance then, which really shaped my life choices since then. And subsequently, the next year, she was also a mentor for me at Google. So that's just like one example, and of course, we'll talk about more.
Nice. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned, for example, Deepa being like a mentor. If you talk about faculty, any particular faculty from CEG, be it computer science or any department, or anybody who had a faculty role at CEG who left a lasting impact, or if you think of CEG, this is the person that springs to mind immediately.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to mention that I do not want to put you on the spot where you take one faculty names and there are 5 others who are like, why didn't he talk about me? So if you want to sidestep this question, I can completely understand.
No, man, these are, start with Dr. Sekar, Dr. Munusamy Sekar, our former dean. So I had the pleasure of taking the engineering mechanics class with him in my very first year.
Nice.
And man, like the passion that he brought to his craft was just phenomenal. It really set the tone for those 4 years. He's one that immediately comes to mind. And then in computer science, there are 2 people that really left a lasting impact. The first one is Dr. Uma Maheshwari. She, in that 3rd year, did an algorithms class that really it helped us understand what these software engineers do at large companies, and she eventually became my advisor as well. And then another professor, Dr. Ranjani Patsarthi, was phenomenal. The one thing about Dr. Ranjani is just she helped me realize how CEG as a space, like as a college, was making it was making access to education happen at a scale that I didn't quite realize, because I'd gone to schools like PSBB in Chennai, where you generally find students that are all from Chennai. And then you go to CEG and you realize that there are students from rural parts of Tamil Nadu, including students that have been phenomenal academically, but in Tamil medium, that are coming here and are thriving. Like, it's a struggle initially, but over time they just become amazing. And I've seen what that has done in terms of what that access to education has done to them eventually, like the economic and the social mobility that it's given them. That in many ways has influenced choices I've made subsequently, like working at LinkedIn.
Nice. That impact is actually quite big. And I don't know, as an undergrad student, you don't tend to realize it then. But when you step back and look at the bigger picture, it makes quite an impact. I completely agree with you there. Okay, let's switch gears a little. So now talking at UIUC, what was one big difference in the education style or content that you noticed, between CEG and UIUC, and you were like, man, if I had that back when I was an undergrad, it would have even made, a bigger difference, or would have helped guide me better?
I felt the master's program at UIUC, and I think most master's programs here, they allow you to make the program what you want it to be. Like, if you remember, Foggy, that summer, when I was just like a little bit clueless on what I wanted to do, and I just dropped into a couple of classes, like one in finance, another in another in design.
No.
And I was like, I didn't even know that you could do these things, like a master's in computer science.
Yeah.
And that summer, I ended up interning at a hedge fund in
Yes.
Chicago called
Yeah.
Citadel. Right. In many ways, opportunities like that I'd like open up when you create a program that is holistic, that gives you choice and allows you to explore paths that I don't know, to Anna University's credit, I just don't, to CEG's credit, I don't think an undergrad program can can offer that kind of flexibility. But it's one thing that I'd love to see programs in India eventually offer. And then there's obviously like the practical aspect of education, which is you end up applying almost anything you learn. As an example, for 3 years in CEG, I didn't have a computer, like a laptop, and you're studying computer science. So all the coding that you would do would be on paper, right? And then you go to UIUC, and day one, you're given an assignment that requires you to like build something, right?
Yeah. I also always got a feeling, I don't know, like I spent most of my grad school teaching undergrads, as part of funding. And I always thought that undergrads here are definitely more fearless when it comes to tackling any problem given to them. Like even if it is an unknown problem which doesn't have a well-defined solution, at least I keep thinking that if I was given the same problem back when I was an undergrad, I would have freaked out, as opposed to people here with the confidence that they present a solution, even if the solution is completely wrong, doesn't matter. But the level of confidence which they come out is phenomenal. I don't know. Have you noticed this? Over your time as as a grad student, or even right now, when you interact with people, when you interview people, when you come across undergrads.
Man, 100%.
Like, yeah, it would be phenomenal if if something like this could be figured out to translate back home. Yeah. Now coming back, to your current profile, director of product at LinkedIn. What does that entail? What is your typical day like? Or to put it very bluntly, what do you do as director of product at LinkedIn?
It's a little bit all over the place.
Okay.
The role product management, so the function in itself is a little bit of a jack of all trades.
Okay.
In that, so it takes a village to build a product, even in the digital world, and you have engineers, designers, data scientists, marketers, and then even non-R&D functions, right? Finance, operations, legal. How do you bring all of these functions together to build a product? And how do you make sure that product has a roadmap and a vision for where you want to take it? And how does that vision translate to your company's vision? Like, how do you see the dots connecting between the two? That's, I guess, in as many fuzzy words, what a director of product does. Now, I lead teams of product managers.
Okay.
And a typical day starts with looking at the health of the product you lead as well as the company. So you end up waking up to a dashboard. And then through the course of the day, it's really rallying these teams to work closely. And in many ways, it's defining the what and the how of products.
Okay, nice. And this is something a lot of people who are currently mid-career, maybe 2-3 years into their job life, or even a little longer. I mean, this deals with, when you transition from being an individual contributor to somebody who's responsible for a group of people, maybe even a team of 2, 3, it kind of starts affecting you, because now you are in this weird situation where you are not contributing as much individually as you are used to, which at least to yourself is sort of your performance metric, or at the end of the day, how much did I do, or what, like, for example, if you're writing code, how much code did I write at the end of the day? That is your typical performance metric as an individual contributor. But now you are suddenly, responsible for a team of people, and during the day, people are asking you questions, you're helping them out, you're guiding them, you are teaching them things to do that you could have done in like 5 minutes and moved on, but new people have to be trained. And these are things that are sometimes very hard to quantify. And then at the end of the day, you leave with the feeling that, what did I do? Or what contribution? So my question is, how did you adjust when this transition happened? And were there any resources that helped you, like in terms of mentors or books or something that told you maybe there's a method to all this? There's a method to do this transition more effectively. What was that process like?
And they say, as you grow in your career, you go from writing code to writing documents to drafting decks to eventually writing email. And that's, a big part of your day ends up being email because it's all about communication. The transition, the first transition from being an individual contributor to leading a small team, managing a small group of either engineers or product managers, that was relatively straightforward for me because it felt I could continue to play this like player coach role, where you're continuing to spend a good 20 to 30% of your time contributing as an individual in addition to managing the team. The harder transition for me was the next step, which is going from managing a small team of individual contributors to managing managers. In that, now you're talking about developing leaders and making and giving them guidance that's at a level that also allows them to apply their unique style of leadership. And that's where I struggled quite a bit initially, and thankfully had lots of mentors around to help me.
That's nice. Yeah, and if you look back on your almost 10 years or longer of professional life, what would be one of your biggest achievements that sticks in memory? Like this was something I'm still proud of till this date that I achieved professionally.
Man, like this question really makes us feel old, Foggy. And there was KG yesterday talking about how he doesn't know Orkut and audio cassette. I can't believe we are already in an alumni conversation.
I know, yeah.
The one thing that I'm personally proud of, take a lot of satisfaction from, is founding the careers team at LinkedIn.
Okay.
So some context here. For all of us, we think of LinkedIn as this place that helps you find jobs, right?
Yes.
For the average American, they did not know that LinkedIn had jobs. They thought of LinkedIn as a social network, so a Facebook for work. So more specifically, a Facebook for people in suits that connect with each other. So high-end, white collared workers. And it was very clear to me, even through my own experience, that the access to opportunity through LinkedIn was just unprecedented. In that, it's just not this job board alone. In a typical job board, you end up searching for jobs and then applying to them and then waiting to hear a response from a faceless entity like a company, right? On LinkedIn, you had this community of people that can help you land that job. You can ask people for referrals. You can reach out to alumni. To me, it was a new way of job seeking, and it was just a big blind spot that LinkedIn hadn't addressed this head on. For starters, because they didn't have a team to build products for job seekers. For me, pitching the need for that team, and then eventually making that team realize its potential was the biggest thing. We started off as a team of about 5 engineers building products for job seekers, and then over the course of 3 years, we built a team of nearly now, I think, 150 engineers, 10
Wow.
product managers. We helped in 2019, 5 million people get jobs.
Wow.
The beauty of it is just that you're actually able to measure this, because people look for jobs on LinkedIn and then they end up updating their profiles saying they are now at this company, right? So we're able to connect the dots and know that LinkedIn was instrumental in helping you land that job. So when you wake up to dashboards like that, that says, hey, how many people did you help get jobs today? It gives a lot of satisfaction.
That's quite phenomenal, and especially in the current times. I mean, yeah, I see that every time I open LinkedIn, there are people asking for referrals. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure the product that you have built is playing a crucial role at this point. I mean, and I can personally attest that my wife was looking for a job for these past 4 months, and LinkedIn played a crucial role in her landing a role. So, thanks to you for building the product that you built. And
I see you commenting on people's threads, like asking for help. It goes a long way, man. Thank you for doing that.
I mean, it's one short thing that I mean, because from my perspective, it's a matter of just writing a comment or pushing a support button, and if just that small act can help somebody find a livelihood and restart their life and get their life to some sort of normalcy. I mean, why not? What is it taking me? Like a few seconds of my day? I mean, that's the least one can do. So
what happens then, Foggy, by you supporting that one thread? It opens up that conversation to people in your network.
Yes.
You now see it on their feed, right?
Yeah.
And that's how opportunities happen. So
yes, yeah. And that's actually, I mean, it's a proper compounding effect, right? It just goes from one feed to the next, and you never know when it lands up on the feed of the right person, and bam, you just need that one connect. So yeah, it's a pretty phenomenal thing. So I mean, everybody who's watching or hearing, I mean, if you ever see somebody make a post like that on LinkedIn, just click that support button. And I mean, as Kumaresh said, you never know what it is going to end up doing. So yeah. And I'm now gonna throw a typical interview sort of a question at you. Where do you think where do you see your professional self in the future? Like, I mean, like right now you've built a phenomenal product, which is this LinkedIn Careers, which has helped people. So if given all the resources, all the freedom, and say even if you take LinkedIn out of the picture, say you just had some unicorn saying, you go build the product that you want, I'll give you all the funding, all the resources that you want. In the future, what do you see yourself building? Or what's the dream? What's the vision? Like, this is what I want I know we are too young to be even asking that question, but if somebody had to ask that, what would you want your legacy to be, or what would you want your impact to be? That yes, this is one thing that I did, and now I can, peacefully say that okay, I achieved what I wanted to achieve in from my professional life.
The answer to this, Foggy, keeps changing almost.
I can imagine. Yeah, definitely.
The one thread that I can think of, so when I was at Google interning in my third year, and I was having conversations with 3 of our alumni, Deepa, Melki, and Vinod, who were all like part of that early wave of CEG grads that were at Google, and they insisted that I go pursue this opportunity to do a master's and potentially a PhD at UIUC. And as I was talking about it, I realized just how my dad had an opportunity to like become a chartered accountant, coming from a village, a farming community, and that access made, in many ways, me have better access to education. And then CEG obviously enabled me to come to another country. And I have a 2-year-old. And in many ways, I'm thinking the opportunities that he will have access to will allow him to go to Mars, right? Like the evolution of getting from a village to a city to a country to another planet has been possible just because of, I guess, better access to education and opportunities. And that problem continues to be something I'm super passionate about. Now, job seeking is one small aspect of it, right? Democratizing access to like education for the right skills, especially in an economy that's dynamically changing. Like, just COVID itself has changed the skills that you need to be successful dramatically. And now you need to figure out how you create world-class content, right? Education for helping people build those skills. So that's roughly the space that I see myself continuing to operate in. LinkedIn offers me that today, but I think in the future I see doing something on my own, and that's
nice. That's good. Changing maybe gears a little bit. The big buzzword of this day and age, machine learning / AI, and probably the first person who introduced me to this word was probably you when you took that course at UIUC. Was it? I don't know. It wasn't Andrew NG, right? Because he's at Stanford. It was somebody else at UIUC, but it was one of the very early courses that was being offered in machine learning and what machine. I mean, it was in its infancy and it was just an academic thing. So could you talk a little bit about what that first introduction to machine learning was like back then? And did you think that it would grow to what it has grown to now?
I clearly didn't see it growing to where it is today. The funny story, the first time I was introduced to it was much earlier when so I used to play chess, and there was this first moment when a machine beat a man at a sport that you would consider to be highly intellectual, right? Like it requires you to understand and be able to look ahead several moves. So Deep Blue defeated Caspro, and I was like, how is this even possible? And there's obviously a lot of what they called artificial intelligence, at which point I was like, how can intelligence possibly be artificial? And then realized machine learning was a big part of it. And that was, I think, like really a moment that got me excited about it. And then at UIUC, the range of problems that you could apply machine learning to, that course really helped me realize that this is going to solve any problem that you could possibly apply it to. But I clearly didn't realize how much of a buzzword, more than a buzzword, how much of impact machine learning will have in every sphere of life. I clearly didn't see it. And the second part is I didn't appreciate the challenges that would entail. Like, everything from how do you make sure these algorithms are doing the right thing? Like,
I mean, I was gonna reserve that for a little later, but now that you bring it in, I can perfectly segue into my next question. I mean, on one side you have machine learning and AI. On the other side, you have the documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, where the ethics of AI has been a big thing. I mean, you watch that documentary. I'll be honest with you. I watched that documentary and I cleaned my phone off 6 different apps. So and it kind of freaks you out as to how surgically precise the whole monetization attempt is using AI. So what are your views on it? Like it's on one hand, this is a technology that, as you said, can be used to build machines doing things like beating Kasparov at chess, or doing medical diagnosis much accurately and much faster, than humans. And on the other side, this same technology is being used to, target humans for ad revenue, or potentially influence their decisions, at different matters. So, what are your views on that, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's scary, man. I saw that documentary, and I had a very similar response. Like, kept the phone out of the, like, I guess, bedroom for a week, and then it sneaked itself way back. It's crazy. So obviously, I think there are these intentional use products like search, and then there are these less intentional use products where an algorithm is deciding how you spend your time, right? The news feed, once you're on it, you're just scrolling through it and not realizing what, like, it's not intentional because you clearly don't know what the next feed post is, but you're just looking for that next dopamine hit. So there's that. There are notifications. So, the companies deciding when to interrupt you. And so there's certainly something that we need to do to make sure well-being is like a key objective that you're solving for, with everything in the second category of non-intentional use products. But even with intentional use products like search, right, where it's you coming to the product and doing, let's say, a job search. One of the things I'm realizing is machine learning is perpetrating some of the biases that existed in your past. So as an example, if the jobs are only like that you get that are posted on LinkedIn only get recommended to people that have historically gotten those jobs. And if people that have gotten those jobs in the past weren't representative of the talent pool, right? For example, like there are diverse talent pools in, clearly in engineering, for example, there are clearly not as many women as we need. Black and Latino communities. It's so the machine learning choices, so the choices that an algorithm ends up perpetrating these biases to an extreme extent. So the one thing that we are watching out for very closely is fair AI. How do you correct some of these biases that exist? That's one part. And the second part is, how do you take control? Like at some point, these algorithms are getting so complex that it's impossible to even explain why it chooses to do what it does. And at that point, I think it's just important that fairness and explainability are a key part of how we build machine learning.
That's nice. Yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, as you mentioned, biases. Up until now, at least in the media, you keep hearing about just the racial bias. That's one of the, for the lack of a better word, one of the most well-known biases. But as you brought it up, it's very interesting that even during job search, the algorithm could be biased towards people who were traditionally getting the jobs. That's a very, very interesting thought. It had never crossed my mind, but yes, that's another bias that the algorithm just could choose. That, oh yeah, let's assign more weight to that and just keep pushing the solution towards that region. That's very interesting. That's very interesting to know. So one last question about this whole business of machine learning and AI. How important or how pervasive do you think this topic is going to be? Like for example, I remember when we were finishing high school, like 10th grade, 11th grade. The most in thing to do was to go to a like a class where you learn how to write C code or you learn how to write Java. That was the most in thing, and everybody was doing that over the break. So by the time you were in 11th grade, 12th grade, or you're entering engineering, most of us had already finished courses that taught us how to write code. Or at least people who were fortunate enough to have that opportunity. Others, they picked it up when they were in, for example, in CEG, where certain classes were offered to take on. So do you think machine learning AI down the line is going to become a skill like that, where, like for example, when you enter grad school and you're handed assignments, it's a basic assumption that you know how to write code in at least one language and you can solve it. So down the line, do you see it happening that you're handed an assignment and I'm not an expert, so maybe the next statement that comes out of my mind might sound stupid, please correct me, but say an assumption is in grad school, you're given an assignment, you already are expected to know how to work with TensorFlow, for example, to solve that assignment. Do you think that's how pervasive this is going to become?
I have no doubt in my mind that will happen, at least over the next decade. Take even just LinkedIn as an example. We have very different kinds of engineers, right? Like web engineers, mobile engineers, API engineers, backend engineers, and then there are AI or machine learning engineers. The single biggest change I've seen over the last at least 5 years is this push to get every engineer to be AI trained. So we've created programs like AI Academy that helps any engineer be able to pick it up. And that, I believe, is just the start. The next step is there are programs that help non-engineers pick up the application of machine learning. So you still don't need to be able to code, but you can still apply machine learning to problems that you have in mind. And I think it's a matter of time. The democratization of it is happening already.
Yeah. And if that's where we are heading, I'm guessing that topics that you mentioned before, explainability and control, become even more important. Because if this is going to end up in hands of people who are non-experts and they're just expecting this, let's call it a black box, to provide them solutions to the problems that they have in mind, then I guess it becomes even more important that this black box is fair and free of unintentional biases. And more importantly, somebody can explain why the black box chose the solution that it did.
Completely.
That's nice. Yeah. All right. So now I would like to move on to our topic, and probably KG, if you want to join the call, please feel free to. This is to do with chess. So my question to you is, I mean, okay, let me at least give you my first or the thing about Kumaresh and chess that shocked me the most. And the best part is the person that involves this story is also on the call, which is Sujeev. I can never forget this moment. So there was this time we were in my apartment. I think it was a weekend morning, and Sujeev happened to call Kumaresh's phone, and they were having a conversation. I walked in on them, and I could not believe that these people were playing a chess game on the phone with not a board in front of them. So Sujeev just enters something like, I don't know, d4 to e5 or something, and a rook. And this guy is just responding back, saying, okay, this is the follow-up move. That completely blew my mind. I was like, how do you play chess without a board in front of you and have all of that in your head? So, I mean, so that was my first, or my interaction with Kumaresh involving chess that I can never forget. So how long have you been playing chess? How long has this passion of yours been going on?
Fuggy, trust me on this, and I told you this even then. It's when you do something for like 15, 20 years, right? And there are only 64 squares. It kind of becomes this thing that you end up picturizing in your head.
Okay. Yeah.
And most people that have done it for that long do it. But I can see how fascinating it could be for someone looking at it. Especially for me, I had that moment when I was on a flight for the first time, and I had two people next to me, and they were playing a game. And I was like, I was this close to just, thinking they may have problems with their mental health, right? So clearly played it for a long time, considered taking it up professionally. And then there came this point where you make a decision. Deep Blue had already defeated Kasparov. Machines were winning. Thought I could be on the winning side.
Is that what motivated you to go into computer science? That I probably cannot beat a machine, so let's just build a machine who can beat everybody.
There's also the realization that I wasn't great at beating all humans at that point either. So.
That's nice. So yeah, KG, do you want to chime in? Do you have anything you would like to ask Kumaresh? Please do.
Yeah. So one of the things when Naveen suggested your name, and I looked up in LinkedIn, and the one thing that caught my eye was you are a coach in chess.com. So that's one website I spent sometimes like hours and hours playing chess. So I was so excited for the Chess Connect, and also realized like in a busy schedule, someone takes time to play chess. So how does it help in terms of your day-to-day, work, or is it just passion? Uh, you just don't think that's different. How do you get time for that?
Um, it's I justify this to myself, for the number of hours that I end up spending on chess, that it's almost like a gym for the brain, right? Like you work out your muscles, and like the brain is one of those things that you need to constantly keep active. You don't have to do 6 hours of it at a stretch to activate your brain, and I think that's where I end up probably overdoing it. The there is I found chess to be incredibly helpful in everything I do. Like, be it with education, where it gave me a very important break from everything academic. Um, at work, I mean, a big part of what you do as you grow in your career is helping your company strategize, helping them come up with a strategy that allows them to be competitive in a landscape where you have like several other companies that are trying to go after the same opportunity that you see. And well, chess obviously is like a two-person game, and this is a multiplayer game. In real life that you're trying to solve for your company. I think your ability to be able to see, hey, if you made a certain move, what will this company do, and this competitor, and then what will that do to the entire industry, and then how do you navigate that? That kind of thinking has certainly helped a lot in my job.
Nice.
I'm going to take
That's
it
good.
offline, but probably I would ask you for some tips to improve myself. So, yeah.
Anytime.
That's nice. Okay. KG, so we are at the end of our planned 40 minutes. Are there questions or anything that we should answer at this point, or can I just continue?
We will open up the floor for questions. I think people might directly ask. I guess if there is not, we will continue with further questions we have.
Okay. So yeah, so if anybody has a question, feel free to pop in, ask us, or if not, I can continue.
Hey guys, this is Aarthee here. Thank you so much for the series. And thanks, Kumaresh, for sharing your valuable insights with us today. I have just generic question. It's glad to know that your passion also lies with content creation or impact through education. I just want to know your opinion, why the sector is so fragmented right now? Why hasn't been there a single player which has come up with a disruptive solution that kind of consolidated this, like say Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Amazon for that matter?
That's a great question. It's something that I haven't given a lot of thought. So, Aarthee, I think this college and graduate education, and then this continuing education that happens after you are a professional. And in the second space, almost like we see it ourselves, about 70% of our revenue in running a learning business comes from the enterprise. So companies choosing to invest in their workforce and reskilling their workforce. So for example, if you are a company that has relied on a certain skill that is being replaced by, that is being displaced at some point by a machine that can do better than humans at that task that your employees do, you need to reskill your employees to be able to pick up new skills. And your company chooses to do that by investing in a learning solution. It turns out that this enterprise learning space is highly fragmented. You have many different players that are offering up solutions, with none yet that are offering clearly, like, I guess, category defining solutions yet. So it still feels like they're all equally competitive, and the content they create is like compelling. Some of them have obviously tried creating aggregators, like marketplaces where they aggregate courses from across many different instructors. It's a space that's still evolving, but I fully see in that continuing education space that it's got to be one enterprise player that wins it all, and that takes time. Like as with any other enterprise business, it could take like a decade or more before we see that kind of a clear player emerging. And then on the consumer side, which is individuals choosing to invest in learning and reskilling themselves. I think there are some players that are starting to emerge that are offering value, like differentiated value, and I can see a leader emerging there sooner than on the enterprise side.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree. There isn't a category king yet in this space. And like KG, I also have same request. I would like to catch up with you, later in order to discuss further about this space.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is Yogesh here. I am IT 2008 graduated from CEG, and not sure if you guys remember me. I remember Kumaresh from our computer stock, Comstock Society, wherein they asked us to have training programs, and then where they will actually have this programming competition. I was not good at that at all. I was just learning there, and it was very difficult for us to catch up with all the questions asked in the thing. So I have a question for Kumaresh. So Kumaresh, you were saying about you wanted to remove the human bias out of the decision made by AI system, but then like your training data is going to have this human bias, right? How are you going to remove the human bias from the training data?
Yogesh, great question, and I can't put a face to the name just yet. So if you turn on your webcam, I may be able to. Yeah. Just for a concept.
So,
all right. Now I remember. So, yes. Thank you.
Oh, you remember? Nice. Okay.
Thanks, Yogesh. Yeah, it's an incredibly hard problem, man. If you have ideas, you should come join us. I think it starts with measuring bias, as with anything else. Like, how do you know that the choices made by an algorithm is perpetrating a bias? So in our world, one thing we are starting to do, and we aren't there yet, and having solved it, is representativeness. So if let's just take designers in Chicago as a talent pool, where you're trying to hire a designer in Chicago and you have a talent pool available. This talent pool has a certain characteristic to it, like 40%, 40% Caucasian, 30% Asian, 30%, a mix of like several other races. And then it has like, let's just say a 60-40 male to female ratio. And then the choices made by this algorithm, for some reason, is distributing that opportunity to white males 70% of the times. Clearly, that is indicative of a bias in that you knew that you had a talent pool of about 60% non-Caucasian and 40% females, that you could have distributed that opportunity at that same ratio, right? So we are starting to like just understand why the algorithm is choosing to do what it does, and a lot of it is pointing to this bias in the training data that you pointed out. And the only way you solve this is by ensuring that you have guardrails in play. Like, the only way you start to solve this is by ensuring you measure it, and then you have guardrails in place that correct unintended biases by an algorithm.
Oh, thank you so much for that answer. Yeah. One more question I had on as a director of product management in LinkedIn, do you get to use the game theory on your or linear programming or optimization algorithms in your everyday day-to-day planning? Or is it work? I mean, how does it work?
No, man. I wish that will be fun.
One of the downsides of going into a management role, right?
It's funny. The only thing I can think of that I use on a daily basis is like basic addition and multiplication.
So much for your training in engineering, math 1, math 2, math 3, right? Yeah, I think
I have a question.
Yeah, sure. Yes, ma'am.
So with the Ask a CEGAANA mentorship program and then the English communication mentoring and coaching program, we get to meet a lot of current CEG students. And if I were to take a message from you to them about how to navigate their careers and also be successful, and the successful has to be defined by them, not by anybody else. What one or two things that I can take back to them?
It's a great question, ma'am. I mean, just reflecting on my own journey, I've got to say, and this is like a problem that I try to solve as a day job, but helping people understand the power of the community. It's hard to realize, like I myself didn't realize that when I was a student at CEG, but looking back, as I mentioned initially, every opportunity that I've had is in some form made possible by a CEGAANA. Be it during my internships, be it at Microsoft, be it at UIUC. I think our alumni community, for starters, is extremely powerful. I would just start with thinking of this community as like a group of friends that can offer help. When you're faced with a career choice of, hey, should I pursue graduate education? Should I, take a job at company X or Y? I think choices like this are something your alums have made several times in their lives and are in a position to help you think through it. They won't make the choices for you. You'll still be the one making it, but consulting with them can be extremely powerful because they may end up giving you perspectives that inform your choices. But what's even more powerful is they may open doors you didn't even know existed. And maybe like you go in asking, hey, should I do X or Y? And they say, hey, you know what? Like there's this opportunity Z at this company that you should be like looking at. That's like for me the number one thing they should be looking to do.
Thank you, Kumresh.
I see Anna P has raised her hand. So Anna, you could unmute, ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I have a two-part question. First one is, I enjoy search. So my question is, would you say that your experience on Bing had a big influence on LinkedIn?
Awesome. Anna, by the way, what's the second part?
Okay. Okay. Because I'm asking about search because I built search on Equinix platform modeling after LinkedIn search. So
Sorry, could you repeat that? I had some
I
trouble.
modeled LinkedIn search in what I built on another platform. So I truly enjoyed how search worked on LinkedIn. So that was why I was asking this question. Let me tell the second question. Can you share your insight on LinkedIn careers? What you see from your role during this pandemic?
Both great questions. The first one, no question that like Bing shaped in many ways what I do at LinkedIn. In fact, I joke with a bunch of friends. I moved from Microsoft to LinkedIn, and then Microsoft bought LinkedIn for $26 billion. And I was telling them that's an expensive price to pay. They could have just like bought me for much cheaper. So the Bing experience offered me, I guess, a glimpse into what it takes to run search at scale across thousands of search intents. So, when you're searching on Bing, it's a generic web search engine like Google, where you could be searching for, images, videos, news, finance, commerce, any of these. When I came to LinkedIn, the one thing I realized was that what LinkedIn did was just people search, finding each other and connect with each other. And I realized that there was so much untapped potential for the platform in that the moment you light up job search, learning search, right, ability to find skills, group search, finding communities that you should be a part of, like our alumni network, post search, understanding what people are posting about a topic, I realized just how much more powerful the platform could become for our users. And in many ways, I ended up using the playbooks that I learned at Bing to create that kind of discovery on the LinkedIn search platform by lighting up each of these use cases and like scaling the search experience. As for the second one, what impact do I see from COVID? It's very clear that during these 7 months, you've had some kind of a V shape as an economy, which is that you've had a massive drop in like jobs being posted on the platform, and then you've seen a great recovery. I would say even beyond pre-COVID levels. So that's the good news. In terms of what's keeping me up at night is that recovery has happened when you take a closer look at that recovery. It's people with what we consider high skilled workers. So people with college degrees that have advanced skills that have been a big part of that recovery. And when you look at the other strata of the economy, people like we consider frontline workers and middle skilled workers. Frontline workers being anyone that doesn't require a 4-year professional college degree, and middle skilled workers being anyone that requires a diploma. So it still requires a special skill, but not necessarily a 4-year college degree to do your work. So this includes like fire. So it includes like several
Mission, set up plan.
Yeah. It's a great example. For that segment, it's still on the way down. So what originally started off like a V-shaped recovery seems more like a K-shaped recovery, in that there's one audience that's going up and the other audience that's continuing to go down from like the COVID impact. And so we need to figure out how we solve this problem, because the truth is LinkedIn has historically catered to that audience that's on its way up, right? In fact, we hear from the second audience that they find it intimidating to be on the platform, because the first question we ask them is, hey, which college did you go to? And they're like, what is this platform? Like, why would I, maybe this is not for me, right? And so it's something that we need to solve.
Thank you. Great answer.
All right. So we are almost we are on the dot of the hour, and we have two more, at least I can see two more hands. So KG, you tell me, do we continue or do we stick to our 1 hour slot and we end the conversation here, and maybe those questions can be asked to Kumaresh offline? I'll leave the decision to you, KG.
Oh, I would love to continue a little bit. So we have those answers for these people who have joined. So okay with Kumaresh and you as well.
Yeah, I'm fine, Kumaresh. Okay, I got the thumbs up from Kumaresh. So Anand Jebakumar, I saw your hand up for a long time. You could unmute, ask your question. Welcome on board.
Yep. Thanks, Naveen and Kumaresh. I'm Anand. I graduated from CG in 2013. And Naveen, you might not remember this, but I contacted you back in 2012 out of the blue asking for suggestions for grad school. So this was very helpful. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Yep. Kumaresh, one question I had is, like, I've been working for 2 years now, and school seemed much more linear. Like, you take this exam, like strategizing was, it was relatively simple. Whereas with work, there seems to be so many things to do, but each one has so many dependencies, and especially like even going from an individual contributor to a managerial position, it seems tricky to navigate. So what are your thoughts on that? And what are your suggestions or career advice, especially for someone in their early stage of career?
Great question, Anand. I struggle with this. I struggled with this a lot. Like the structure that that you have in place all the way through to even like completing grad school, and then you're out in the like wild world with no such structure. It's you defining, I guess, your career path forward. I personally found myself looking at people. So take LinkedIn, for example. We have a stellar executive team, and I would look at some of them and pick a trait or two, and I would say, eventually I see myself still being authentically myself, but incorporating in that new version of me that trait that I see in this person. In that, like, that's how you end up modeling your evolution as a leader. As you grow in your career, you end up finding role models, and then finding, and obviously they have their strengths, and then they have their areas where they have opportunities to grow, and you end up picking those strengths and want to be like, I want to be as good as them at that. For me, that helped at the very least give me something to work towards in each of the dimensions that I felt were important in shaping me. As an example, our CEO, Jeff, our ex-CEO, Jeff, is one of the most influential communicators I've seen. Like, his ability to own a room, no matter how big it is, and be able to inspire that room is phenomenal. And I was like, man, one day I want to be owning a room like Jeff. And then you would see an Alan, who's our founder, who would tell me how he envisioned LinkedIn on day one, and be like, and he continues to present strategies that to me seem like they're 50 years away. And I'd be like, one day I want to build a vision in my head for what this thing could be, the way an Alan does. I think once you start identifying those things, and obviously there are a lot of these, so it's important that you prioritize and pick those dimensions that you want to get better at. But I think it ends up creating that structure. It's still not quite the same as like, hey, I spent 3 semesters on this and like ace it with an A. But eventually it helps you work towards these dimensions that you identify.
Thanks. That is really helpful. I think it's interesting that you pointed out, look at skills or qualities in people you would emulate, as opposed to look at different job opportunities and apply randomly. So very helpful. Thank you.
The next person, Raji, you could come on board, ask a question.
Hi, thank you very much, Kumaresh. I've used LinkedIn for quite a few years now. For example, I can see so much difference in LinkedIn like 5, 6 years ago and the last 2, 3 years. I didn't see as much of opportunities I could get like 5, 6 years ago. And now in the last 2, 3 years, now, my startup didn't have funding. And now I see like in 2019, 2020, all my latest jobs are through LinkedIn. And I in this whole process I can see what you it resonates with me. Some of the differences what you have done, actually I benefited from it. And what I had to also do is change the keywords in my own resume and highlight some courses I did. And also, like, in fact, very frankly speaking, take out the year I graduated, right? To take that age bias out of the person looking at it. So I can do that because now I feel empowered to, like, I say, if I write this, these are the kind of recruiters who are going to reach out to me. So I am like empowering by like understanding that this whole thing is based on keyword search. And based on my resume, my past experience, and what I want to highlight and what I want to put down, right? Like my year of graduation. But as a system, I'm sure like lot more intelligence goes into it to eliminate that kind of bias. And I want to understand how you're working towards it.
It's a great question. By the way, one thing I was consciously trying to make this session was not a LinkedIn sales pitch. So I apologize if it came out that way.
I attest to that. And because I had stopped using LinkedIn after 2014-15, and then I was trying a startup. And then after a few years, I said, let me try LinkedIn again. And it was a complete different experience.
Thank you for that. I hope some of these insights from, like, I guess, the practical application of machine learning, correcting biases can apply to your fields in ways that I could relate to with LinkedIn. And that's one of the reasons for getting into like that level of depth with the LinkedIn topics. As for age, as well as we see several such biases, Raji, it's crazy. Like just the profile photo can cause so much bias. So much so that one day we had this crazy idea that we should replace all these photos with just superhero, like cartoons, right? And the challenge we had, believe it or not, was that we only had white males as superheroes that we could pick, which in turn will perpetrate its own bias. So we were like, where it's a massive challenge, and it's clear that LinkedIn has this responsibility of continuing to solve it. The one thing I can tell you is that we are moving towards measuring biases across each of these dimensions. Age, race, gender, ability, physical ability, right, to make sure people with disabilities aren't discriminated against. There's ethnicity, economic strata, right, and then skill strata, the frontline, middle skilled, high skilled. These are all dimensions, making it an incredibly complex, multidimensional problem. The one thing I can tell you is that with every change we make, the one principle that we are holding ourselves to is that it'll not make the bias any worse. And that's a start. It's not going to solve the problem overnight, but if we see an experiment that we run show massive gains in like business value, but is creating just that tiny bit more bias, we are now taking a step back and looking at that experiment more closely to understand why that's happening and see if we can adjust for it while preserving some of the wins that we get on the business side. So that's the kind of, I guess, change that over time will hopefully lead to more positive outcomes.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raji. Thank you, everyone who chimed in with your questions. This was an amazing session. I think this is probably a good time to call it a day, and thank Kumaresh for his time. Thank you for joining us, making this happen. Thank you to KG and Karthik and everyone else who's Shanta ma'am and everyone else who's involved in the CEGAANA activities and pushing to make the CEG alumni base, giving it a concrete structure. I mean, it's not like we don't have the alumni base. I mean, this is something I've been ranting about since last night to KG, Kumaresh, that it's not like we don't have great alumni. I think what is missing is the structure. So I think CEGAANA is doing a phenomenal job in trying to provide that structure. Now, I think it's up to people like us to make sure this structure reaches out to everyone, and most importantly, current students at CEG who see this as one of the biggest pillars of support that they have once they get out into the wild west, as Anand pointed out. Once you're out of school, it's wild country out there, and you no longer have the structure. So hopefully, associations like CEGAANA or even the Indian arm of the Alumni Association gives you that form of structure, that form of stability that you can rely on as you navigate your professional and even your personal life for that matter. So thank you, everyone. And I had great fun. Thank you, Kumaresh, for doing this. KG, if you want to say any closing words, the floor is all yours. Or Shanta ma'am, if you have anything.
Oh, I wanted to say thank you, Naveen, for holding a great, engaging and interesting fireside chat with Kumaresh. Enjoyed it.
You're most welcome.
Just one part. I think we had like some of the toughest questions to Kumaresh today, and I'm really happy that he was very sportive, and also immense thanks to Naveen, because it started everything from there. And everyone else joined today. I'm very glad you all joined, and I hope you liked it. Please keep supporting us so we can do more. It's all the network now. We need to have more conversations like this. Thank you so much.
Just one thing, guys, sorry to keep you much longer.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you for this to all of you. I can't wait to co-host more prominent alumni. Thank you for creating this platform. Foggy and I are already talking about how we go about this. So excited.
Yeah, looking forward to holding more sessions. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.